Hi everyone, welcome back to season 5 of the How to Do It video series. Now, special treat for everyone today. We're out here at the farm of my partner Claudia. We call her Cloudy. It's kind of one of those things where you call a red-headed person blue because she's anything but cloudy. She's like pure sunlight, and we call her Cloudy cheekily, and it's become the name that stuck. We're going to look at, she's got her son is involved in a really intensive, we're going to look at that model of the intensive food production, the small-scale intensive super efficient food production with Cloudy's son Tristan. But we're out here at the moment because where we are is some really, really deficient soils. They're sand, they've got very little of anything. You can feed them. And of course, this paddock we're in was previously what kind of orchard?
Apricots.
So previously an apricot orchard, so obviously you can feed and you can fertigate and so forth, but the inherent base soil has got bugger all of anything. And the evidence of that is this plant that is considered a weed all over, and people are poisoning it out. But of course, it's dominated this region by lovegrass because lovegrass grows where there's very little of anything. And we've done one soil test on a block that's never had anything, and it was the lowest nutrition that I've actually ever seen. So it was so in that context, there's a huge role for this concept of free choice supplementing and just. Just to give you some background, just from my own personal experiences, I used to think, well, how the hell does a cow know what it wants to eat and so forth? But many years back, on a friend of mine called Rod Rush's property, had a large-scale farm, and this was before anyone knew about the benefits of cell grazing. Big herd just move into a paddock for a few months and then move into another paddock. But the interesting thing was they were big paddocks, like 500 acres. The interesting thing was that there was very, very different soils on the farm, and there was, one of the paddocks that he'd move into had very, very different profiles minerally. We tested them. So it was a really interesting kind of exercise to monitor. And so he had a free choice trailer with all the minerals and so forth, and Claudia will talk about that at the moment. But we monitored exactly what they took in each of the paddocks, and it was absolutely mind-boggling to see how closely. In fact, it was just a dovetail. It was absolutely what was missing in the field was what they took from the free choice trailer. So they absolutely know what they need. Yeah. But at this point, I'll pass over to Claudia because she's going to talk about her experiences with free choice supplementing and what it's meant to her and so forth, and a few other things. We're also going to talk about animal supplements generally and what we can put into water for multiple benefits. But Claudia.
Hello. Our property is called Mt Dillon, and the Mt Dillon is just behind us. So we're at the base of Mt Dillon at the moment, and it's the place of peace and happiness. So we as a family appreciate the land. And so yes, as Graham said, there's not really very much here on the in the soil itself. So the lovegrass came in with building the big dam, and then I had a couple of horses. So years ago, we never had any grazing at all. My late husband, we just had orchards. We had this as an apricot orchard, then we had a plum orchard where the green crop is now, and then we had a cherry orchard, and we had also 4 children that we looked after. So it was pretty busy. But the horses actually were free grazing. There was no fences really, and the horses were everywhere, and the horses eat the lovegrass. They love it and then poop it into their poo, and they planted it beautifully for me everywhere. So, but as it is, it's obviously the one, so everybody's always very busy saying how bad the lovegrass is, but when it's managed properly, then it's actually in the dry time like it is now, it's actually really good. I have tried to keep this particular field totally left alone, but that's never ever the case. The roos jump over, the goats crawled in, so it's sort of semi-grazed, and the cows have been in here for 2 days, so it's poor. But the cows have been moved every day, and I cell graze the cows. And I feel if I didn't have the mineral trailer, there wouldn't be a herd of cows as they are at the moment. So we have a Coleby mix, which has got dolomite, it's got kelp, it's got copper, and it's got sulfur. And then I've got the
just interrupting for a second.
Yeah.
I mean, for those of you who are not familiar, Pat Coleby was kind of way ahead of her time in terms of nutrition, and people globally use this Coleby mix, which is what Claudia just described, and it's really got the track record. It's really proven to be an effective lick.
Yeah. So it's really, as Graham said, it's really interesting because it all varies. But what I do, so in here, for instance, I've put a boom spray out in spring, and it had burnt lime and Fulvex and kelp and diatomaceous earth. And I sprayed this out here because I've got a weed problem other than lovegrass. It's fireweed, and it is really bad. And this is why we have a mob of goats, to keep the fireweed. They don't eat it totally, but they eat the flowers off, and it slows it right down from seeding out into everywhere else. But being in here and having sprayed all that, and it actually slows down their mineral uptake a lot. So that will come in and have a little lick of the Coleby mix. But then I've got the Bos Lik, now Kandanga Bos Lik, and it's amazing. Without that, I wouldn't be here. It helps us
So just
keep
for
the
1
fly.
second, I'll just interrupt for 1 second.
Yeah.
So the concept, that, as you mentioned, of when you sprayed out that sort of mineralized mix, that they stopped eating the minerals there, there's a real point here, and it's an argument, a fairly strong argument for the value of foliar fertilizing, because the reality is, in terms of availability of how the animal's going to utilize the minerals, is that, if you could take some lime or some dolomite or whatever, the calcium and magnesium component, and there's only a very small component of that that's absorbed in that raw mineral form. I mean, the rumen goes to work on it and you get some of it. But you put those minerals, for example, through the plant with the foliar, which is 12 times more efficient, and the plant takes up the plant-derived colloidal minerals, it's 97% uptaken. That's why you can really justify the low cost of foliar fertilizer, although it takes some time. And you just noted that because they ate less after your foliar sprayed, which is what you'd expect to see.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Yes, it's a very, so we've had very dry times, getting 5 mils here and 3 mils there, and it adds up for an inch per month is not enough moisture for things to grow. And this is why we've got this non-growing grass, and I've run out of paddocks because nothing's growing. So this is why this paddock looks particularly bad, even though it hasn't properly been grazed. But and the Bos Lik, as I was going to say, is for fly. So between the Bos Lik and the Bos Bag, so that's diatomaceous earth in the Bos Bag. And I've tried all sorts of things.
Just explain the Bos Bag for people who...
Yeah, so the Bos Bag has got probably people all know the Bos Bag, but inside of here, we've flipped this one up there because it's in the way, but inside here is a potato bag, and then there's shade cloth, and then there's diatomaceous earth, which is tailored for back rubber. And you can buy this from Bos Rule. And typical me, being Austrian, I want to make it really good. And so I had 2 Bos Bags. And then I thought, no, I have to have it in here. So if they want the lick, they have to have the bars here. So come in, and then they have to get the diatomaceous earth put on them. That is all not right. So I got rid of one because they need space. And I'm going to probably take this back bar off and leave that because it's got weight in the front, which helps me when I move the trailer. But yeah, so between...
So the concept of diatomaceous earth, just briefly for those who don't understand the model, is the silica-based shells of little creatures that were entombed in geological upheavals, and it just looks like gypsum. And basically it's super abrasive. It looks like broken razor blades, and it can sort of cut up and disrupt the flies and so forth. And so it can help to manage flies. And do you find it does that?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, it's a combination. The whole thing is I'm doing everything. So any animal that's been come here, they have never had any chemical on them at all, ever. So if we do have to drench, it's a drench that Shane Gregg has passed down on us for us. which is no chemicals at all. But between the Bos Bag and the mineral lick, it's got really good like components, and it's got like the garlic. It's a garlic oil that they uptake, and so in winter time I will have a mineral lick, a mega min block for dry feed, and that they eat that a lot. But that's got a little bit of like they eat that in winter, because in winter it doesn't matter so much about the mega min block because the fly is not here in winter. It's all too cold for them yet. It'll maybe change. So that's that. And then we've got the Stock Saver.
So just explain what Stock Saver is. So Stock Saver is just a free choice in this trailer, is it?
Yes, Stock Saver is at the back there.
The black one.
And and they lick very minimal on that.
Yeah.
Like it is just like a teeny weeny lick every so often, and they don't need much. At the beginning, they went through it a bit more.
Yeah. So Stock Saver, just so you know, is sodium humates. So the humic and fulvic acid, all the things that we describe that they do as biostimulants in the soil and plant, work the same way in the rumen. In fact, it's a very, very powerful enhancer of digestion and feed utilization. We've had growers that said the only reason they got through the drought was Stock Saver increasing the value of substandard food during a drought. So the humic fulvic acid is kind of like, it's also really good for things like scours. We actually guarantee that it stops tick scales or you get your money back, and we never have to give the money back because it does. And part of that mode of action is it's sort of like activated charcoal, except it's got many other benefits in terms of sucking up the toxins. And then it's very, very well researched to stimulate animal immunity. And so you then fight off the bacteria involved in the scours sort of thing. So it's got, like especially this enhancer of rumen efficiency that is, very, very valuable. And so there's different ways you can do it. Some people put it in the trough, some people dose it if the animal's sick, and you can double dose in that instance to recover animals. And there are some remarkable stories about animal recovery. But in this instance, often people will put something else with it. But in this case, Claudia's got it, and it's one of the few times I've seen it. It's just raw, and they take it as they need it. And it's small amounts. We're talking 20 grams per 100 kilograms per week is the requirement on a supplementary level. It's 100 grams per animal per week. So not going to be having big mouthfuls.
Well, when I first started out, I used to mix it into the water, and then I used to find it would settle down into the trough, and it didn't really work. And it kind of feels like it's wasted. It's expensive, like for a farmer. But like this, they really come in. They come in and go, lick. And that's it. It's really good. But also because when I do boom spray, I put Fulvex into the boom, and also the kelp, the trikelp, and that just stops. That really slows down this, because it's magic. Boom spraying is magic, but it takes time. It takes effort. I can do a 600-liter boom spray. My equipment is not built for big things, so a 600-liter will spray a hectare. And it is time, and I'm driving over the ground. I feel that actually too much compaction is actually is a problem here. So I really think I need a yeoman's plow to just loosen the soil. But what I was going to say, in combination, the exciting part for me is to actually have hung in there, and with such poor rain and poor ground, and we've had 100%. I know it's a small herd, but we had 100% fertility, and we haven't given them anything. We did give them a bit of a silica, vitamin B injection before calving, and then the calves later on, they get one, but that's it, and they have no poison. And all of them fell pregnant. All of them had healthy birth. They just birthed. They're Dexter cows. We moved to Dexter cows because we feel that all the others, I started out with Simmental, and they're just far too big for this country. And they had all sorts of problems. I mean, the fly was so bad on them, they would just rub themselves, and they would have raw bits all on their necks, and it was just not good. And everything has been built up. When we started out, we didn't have a single dung beetle, not one. And now I come out here, and wherever they poo, the dung beetle flies in. It's really interesting because in the evening is when they're the most busy, so that you can hear what I call the dung beetle hum, and it's very exciting. I mean, who gets excited about cow poo? You have to be into it. And I just think it's magic. And I know there are other people that have heaps and heaps of them, but I've never introduced a single dung beetle. They've come and they're there.
And largely since you started the cell grazing and
all the cell
supplementing.
grazing, having no poisons. And the big thing, I reckon the really, really big thing about it all is BAM. I mean, BAM is the bee's knees. It really is. BAM goes into my foliar, BAM goes into everything. Obviously, if I'm doing a lime spray, I can't put BAM, and I've got my beautiful Graham advising me on what I can do and can't do. I can't put BAM with calcium like that. The pHs don't add up. So I do this different when I do the BAM with the molasses. And
just for those who don't understand BAM, because we're talking terms, and it stands for beneficial anaerobic microbes. It's something I've taught many times of how you can brew it in 1,000-litre shuttles very, very inexpensively. It's not free, but it's close to it. It's just $2 or $3 or $4 a hectare maximum. It's that whole concept of do-it-yourself living fertilizers, and it's really the sort of epitome of that potential. The wonderful thing is that it's largely dominated by lactobacillus, and so it has a little recognised probiotic potential. And Claudia, I don't know where you picked up the idea of using it as a probiotic, because we don't actually promote it, but it's quite safe for that purpose. And you've found it to be, and lots of people now in Canada, they've really embraced the idea of putting it in the troughs. I mean, you can put it in the troughs to clean up algae, and then you've got this probiotic in the trough, which is wonderful for rumen health and all sorts of immune stimulation and so forth that comes from. Same as we would take lactobacillus as a probiotic. Well, you can brew your own and put it in the trough.
Yeah. So with the BAM, I have slowed it down. When I first started out, I would put 10 litres of BAM into 2,000 litres of water. But because that is their water, I slowed the whole thing down a little bit, so probably put 5 litres. I just put half a bucket of BAM into the water, and it comes out into the trough, and it's mixed up. The cows love it, and I also put apple cider vinegar in with it. I would put equal.
To give you an idea that brewing it yourself, that 5 litres is like $2.
Yeah, I mean, it is affordable, but it is just magic. Honestly, the cows that they poo, and the dung beetle literally just flies in. I think it's all a combination because they've got this really healthy gut going on, and you can go out there and their poo doesn't stink. Honestly, it's like, the other day I come out here with my granddaughter Florence, and we put the stick in the poo and have a look how many dung beetles we can find. And she goes, there's one and there's one. But it's really interesting because there's 2 kinds, and I don't know the names of them or anything, but some of them are black, and the other ones are they're more the multicolored ones, and it feels that they've kind of taken over. I don't see very many black ones at the moment. Maybe it's too hot for them, I don't know. But in wintertime, they slow right down. I can't get dung beetles in winter when it's too cold. Yes, but we are going to look at the poo in a minute, and they poo it out and the dung beetle goes in, and it's magic. And then we've got the Seachange stock booster. So I would put 1 litre of that, the kelp, into 2,000 litres of water. I probably wouldn't put that every day. It's a once a week thing. But with this...
So kelp again, and these soils, I mean, kelp is all 74 minerals from the ocean. It's used as a rescue remedy, and of course in agriculture, and it's very much used similarly for livestock. One of the huge benefits is that one of the missing links in reproductive efficiency in animals is iodine, and the highest source in iodine is really, really important for reproductive efficiency. And of course, we never put it back; we've taken it out. It's a mineral, an naturally occurring mineral that has well and truly been mined from most soils. And so, iodine for humans is hugely important. It's about thyroid efficiency. It's about, the whole endocrine system is based upon the thyroid, and no different for animals. It's really, really important for reproductive efficiency and general health. And the highest known source of iodine by far is kelp. So wonderful. And the final other thing with kelp is the relatively new research linking that the feeding of kelp reduces methane emissions from animals, which is got some great value.
Yeah, it's got great value. Like I said, their poo doesn't smell. And yes, and then Kandanga, I was pretty worried about, the money involved in doing the minerals and ongoing costs that it is. And they advised me, make sure you've always got salt. So we got the salt, we've got the Himalayan salt block, like just bits, and I licked that. I'm going to change over. We did an RCS course, and a lovely gentleman was there, and he's doing the vinegar and salt differently, and I'm going to change that over because I haven't got enough vinegar really to pour that into water, and every normal person, vinegar is very expensive, so they put. I can't give you the recipe because I can't remember it and I couldn't find the paperwork on it. But they put, I think it's apple cider vinegar, and it might be 50-50 with water, and then they put it right over the salt. And then the cows just have a lick every so often. And so, but the problem with that is in here is that I can't really put it in here because it'll swish out. So I'm going to cut one of these drums and put it in one of those drums, and then push the lid, like just cut that a little bit open, and then push the lid over the top for when I move the trailer, so I don't swish out the vinegar everywhere. And there's an empty space. Well, that is where the other lick will go in wintertime. I always leave the Bos Lik there.
That's good.
Is that about it?
That's great.
Yeah.
Good, thank you. That's really good. So we'll have a little bit of a wander, and we'll have a look at some of the cow poo, and we'll even go down and have a look at the issue, of course, with this hugely productive practice of multi-species cover cropping is that you've got to get the timing right, and it's so difficult because we've been through this really dry period, and we've got a lot more dry to come, I think, in this region. And there are many people who put in their cover crop thinking there was going to be rain. There was no rain, and they sort of felt like they did their dough, as they say. And that was very much the case with Claudia. She worked up a paddock really reluctantly because
I'm really reluctant.
We didn't like disturbing the field. And she's put in the cover crop, which looked like it had failed, but it's where we can see from a distance. I don't think it's quite so good close up.
No.
But it's not all of it, but a lot of it's come up, and it's the green paddock on the farm. And there's a bunch of feed there already. And of course, she's just had this tiny bit, this 25 mils after no rain for months. And that sort of kicked it along a little bit. But we'll go down and have a look at that cover crop as well. And
so I need to just add for the cover crop, I guess we can talk about that right now. I don't have a no-till seeder, So this is all developing and more developing. So we have a little Green Pro. And it actually worked really well. But I always feel when you have all these species in the cover crop, some want to be planted lower, like more shallow. Some want to be planted deeper. And it, like, that was the paddock that was ripped. And it was hickledy-pickledy, up and down like a yo-yo. It was really hard. And then the Green Pro is like only a meter wide. But I don't have like the motorbike won't pull it. It's not strong enough, and I don't have a side-by-side. So I had to use my tractor to pull it. And so I've got the big wheel spaces where I couldn't actually plant because I would drive over the planted stuff. So it's really very much a trial. I know the cover crops out there, they're far better than what I could do, but I did the first one, and it's probably going to be one that, like, from how bad the weather was, it's kind of quite encouraging actually to do it. And Tristan and I were talking about it, and we might be able to do better. Like I was watching Covers Down Under, and I was watching them talk about it, how when you put your summer mixed crop in, then the winter crop is a lot easier. And in my case, now I have got competition, kind of, with lovegrass. That was only lovegrass in there, lovegrass and kikuyu. Kikuyu used to just sit there. It was a sit. It was terrible. And I just worked it up, ripped it, basically, and then just not much working the ground, and then Green Pro over the top of it. And yes, I'm glad I did it.
So I just did a tour a couple of months back of the East Coast in my mobile home, doing talks and visiting farms in multiple locations, and lots of grazing properties. And the biggest thing that I saw basically was this concept of how, if you get the rain, how effective multi-species cover cropping can be in terms of a food source. It was just some wonderful results across everywhere. Just for those of you who, I'm sure most of you know all about this simple base logic behind cell grazing, but the very simple concept is, if we look at that concept of viewing nature as adherence to natural laws and principles and learning from nature, and we ask the question, what were the biggest producing soils ever in the history of mankind? And you find very quickly that it was the Great Plains in the US, and what drove that wonderful unparalleled productivity, it was the buffalo, huge herds of bison, predator effect, Indians one side, wolves the other. You weren't choosy about what you ate when someone's head was right next to you. Massive amounts of dung and urine and trampling the grass and the biostimulation, breaking down that and building humus, all in that compacted, concentrated effect. But the interesting thing when we're learning from nature was that the buffalo never grazed below 4 inches. And the question is, why is that? And the answer to that question is quite simple. The leaf is the solar panel. The solar panel is feeding the roots, and the root depth is based upon the size of the solar panel. If you've got 12 inches, if you were to dig beneath this, and you've got your 30 centimetres, you would have 30 centimetres of base root structure, roughly. I mean, there's going to be some other things happening. As you prune, the roots prune themselves because the top part can't feed them. And so leaving that 4 inches, which is what the buffaloes did intuitively, allows the system, if you graze it to the ground because your dad said take it to the dirt boy, it turns out to be a horrible mistake, in the sense that you've taken the solar panel, you've taken the whole driving dynamism of the whole system of feeding the soil with no leaf. How do you do that? So cell grazing is just recognising a natural principle and saying, okay, it involves labour, and you know all about the labour involved.
Yes, I call it my meditation. I put up the strings every day. I've just put this up here because we were filming yesterday, and I've just not done it in here. And also, I like to look at the animal. I like to look at the earth, and I like to, we have to have a heart. We had a really cold spell with rain. I didn't put them in here. I put them in the paddock next to here, so they've got some trees to be under. It wasn't the one that I should have put them in from the rotational grazing point of view, but then we have to actually go with what we need to do, and I think that's not being too rigid watching the animals. And like Graham says about the solar panel, they can't leave a solar panel because they're fenced in. In the Great Plains, they were free animals, and they would just keep on walking and keep on grazing because they could. And in here, they're fenced in wherever we've got them. So it's up to us to move them along. And I would say if we didn't cell graze, it wouldn't work. Like, it's just enough. We can get by. But I may change my whole, the way everything is set up, I may change that and not have breeders and just bring in animals in spring, push them through, and push them through all summer.
We're surrounded, for those of you who can't see, we're surrounded by the Dexters. And of course, the reason for the Dexters, aside from the fact small animals less impact and they can manage this rougher ground better, is that there's a lot of forest. I mean, we're surrounded by it, and they'll eat a little bit of everything. Yeah. And if you haven't tasted Dexter meat, one of my distributors, my key distributor in North America, Dave from Canada, his wife used to run herds of Dexter. She actually had contracts to clean up national parks and so forth, and she'd bring them in big floats. And she won the best meat in the EU 2 years. I mean, it is wonderful meat. There's so much herbal variation going into the diet of these little animals that if you haven't yet tasted Dexter meat, you're in for a treat.
Yeah, and it's the thing, like in here in this particular paddock used to be apricots, and that's not where they usually are, because when they're up here in Mt Dillon, all of it is bush, and they can eat a little bit of wattle and tea tree, and they will do that. Whilst if you get a higher bred animal like the Simmentals, when the drought broke in 2022, I think we started buying, or 21 or 2, we bought in cattle, and they were horrendous price, and all I could get was Simmentals, and I come from Austria, and the Simmental is a heartwarming thought for me. Oh, not a goer. Like, it's just not a thing. They're too big for this country, and the Dexters are good and really pleasant animals, lovely. They are not nasty or fierce or anything like that.
They seriously need some marketing for people to realise just what that meat can taste like.
Yeah, and the ratio between meat and bone.
Yeah.
You know, you get these big animals and there's heaps of bone, but these are fine-boned animals, lower to the ground. The ratio for the meat between the bone for a finished off animal. Like, I mean, these things, these animals do not get anything but grass and minerals and water with bam, 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 and vinegar. Yeah, it's awesome.
Okay, so that kind of wraps up this little segment on farming in fairly rugged conditions, and Claudia has done an admirable job, and she's discovered this concept of cell grazing and the concept of foliar fertilising and supplementing, free choice supplementing. And it's really got it through. I mean, we're talking drought conditions here, and these animals are in really good shape. So great effort. Thank you.
And I would like to say thank you to Graham for always being supportive, and he bought me the trailer. We found the trailer in Toowoomba, and then his guys out at the Applethorpe farm helped build the roof on it. And, you know, and I just couldn't do it without, Graham's support.
But for me, I love passion, and you can't find more passion than this lady. So anyway.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you.